but this is Brent Allen Winters, commonlawyer.com, www.commonlawyer.com, coming at you from the remote hinterlands of the Wabash River Valley, where the hogs, the frogs, and the dogs keep up a racket all night long. This is a Common Lawyer Comments concerning our common law, our law of the land. We are going through the Catechism of the Constitution, and Miss Francine told me we're on question 157 of that Catechism. 157 out of 333. Stansbury Catechism. This is Stansbury, Arthur J. Stansbury, published 1828, back when the Constitution may have meant a little more than it does now. Probably did. A brief of common law government. That's what it is. You don't understand or don't have any cognizance of our common law tradition, its phrases are utterly meaningless. Chief Justice Taft of the U.S. Supreme Court said that the words and phrases of our Constitution of the United States are couched in the language of our common law. Well, let's look at it. That's what this catechism is for, is to direct a little light. Now, who was this Arthur J. Stansbury? He was a preacher trying to do his duty. He saw it at that time. My job is to teach people the laws of nature. Well, let's get to 157. Question 157, Arthur J. Stansbury. When a direct tax is laid, question, when a direct tax is laid, that is, when Congress order that a certain sum of money must be paid by each American for the public use, what is the rule by which it is to be collected? Let me read that question again. This is exceedingly important. Why? Because fundamentally we don't have a Congress but for two reasons. Any other reason we got a Congress for, and anything else they do is pretty much out of their jurisdiction, but that's most of what they do now. Congress exists for two reasons. So you'll have a representative body that decides how to take your personal property from you for public use by force or threat of force. Yeah, a legislative body that decides how much property is to be taken from you for public use under threat of force or force itself. That's a lot of power, friends. That's Congress. And we'll get to this too. Congress has the power to collect taxes according to the Constitution of the United States. Then why in the Sam Hill do we have an IRS to collect taxes under the President of the United States? Well, I'm asking the question, why? I'm quoting our Constitution of the United States. Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes. That's what it says, and rightly so. Why aren't they? Oh, let's talk about it a lot. That's why we're talking about it. We have a window of opportunity. The spirit of the times is right. We'll be talking about such things. IRS is under the executive branch. Constitution says collection is to be under the legislative branch. Can you imagine? Congress trying to hire folk to collect taxes? Americans get ticked off. What are they going to do? What's their legal remedy? Well, throw every one of them out. That's next election, just a short 2 years later. Pitch them out on their cans. As we say, throw them out the door and don't even bother to open it before you do it. I've seen men try to do stuff like that. Yeah, it can get real ugly. Well, sometimes there's no other way to deal with people. Well, I saw a door yesterday on a church built in 1881. 1881 in a little town in southern Indiana. In southern Indiana, built 1881. town was founded in 1881, I believe, or 1880, right? They built the church right when they put the town up. Building was old. Old building. I don't know what kind of church it was started as, but it was old, but it had original doors on it. Just one room, you know. The original doors, no kidding, were that thick, and they were solid hardwood, red oak. And it is of significance that that little town had a giant sawmill right in the center, or right near the center. A sawmill for hardwood, red oak, white oak. What else? Those are the two main ones, of course. Red oak and white oak. Oh, walnut is the big one. Woo! Indiana walnut, or anywhere in the Wabash Valley, it's valuable stuff. Well, they had a sawmill there, so I assume it's right in an area that has been heavily mined for coal. An island of hills in the middle of a prairie, otherwise. You couldn't throw somebody through that door. Well, no, I don't think anybody could. Looking at it, that thing was better than armor. Looked like the hull of a battleship. 157, direct tax. When a direct tax is laid, when Congress order that a certain sum of money must be paid by each citizen for the public use, what is the rule by which it is to be collected? Here we go. What is the rule? The census. The census that our Constitution says to be taken once every 10 years. Why? For purposes of fair taxation, period. When they send you a census form, they want to know how many commodes you got in the house. Do you have running water? How many firearms do you have? Yeah. How many people in your family? Are you married in a church? You're married in justice of the peace? Are you married or single? Or are you just shacking up together? By the way, what color is your skin? Please take a photograph and send us so we see the exact color. Are you Republican or Democrat? I mean, these are the kind of questions. You think I'm exaggerating? Maybe you haven't filled out a census form, and I remind you. To fill out a census form, that's called an information return. Information return. Same thing as a tax return. It's an information return. You're putting information on it. Then you swear at the end under penalties of perjury that everything on that form is true and correct. True and correct. And if you lie on that form, or they can persuade a jury that you told the truth with intent to mislead the government, told the truth with intent to mislead the government, that's the same thing as lying. That's what they say. They convict people and send them to federal prison for doing that. How do I know? I've defended people in that situation, and I've been put in that situation myself and tried in federal court. They admitted everything on the form is true, but we think you were intending to mislead us. That's what they said. 6 weeks of trial, among other things, conspiracy against the United States, blah, blah, blah. Isn't it funny? Odd. A day will come, the Bible says, when right will be taken for wrong, wrong will be taken from right, right will be taken for wrong will be taken for right, good becomes evil, the patriots become the enemy persecute and prosecute the ones that love their country. You know what's really telling? Lots of military veterans in federal prisons, always have been. Well, since federal prisons have been around, they haven't been around that long. They didn't need them. There weren't any federal laws, no federal crimes. That was all a state matter. It's not a federal matter. Congress passed laws saying we got crimes when our country started. We had a Secretary of State, Secretary of War, now called Secretary of Defense, Department of Justice, Secretary of Justice, State, War, Justice. What was the other one? There was one other one. It must not have been very important. There were four members of the cabinet of the President of the United States, the cabinet. It's an odd word, isn't it? That's where you put, we used to call them cup boards, where you put your coffee cups. Cabinet. Kind of dumb. Anyway, the folk that were under the President of the United States that took his orders and directed the government. No, there wasn't no Secretary of Commerce. It's the other one that comes to people's minds. Secretary of War, no Secretary of Transportation, no. Secretary of War, Secretary of State.
How about Treasury? Did he have that one?
Miss Francine, yeah, thank you. I thought I said it enough. Somebody would say, yes, Secretary of the Treasury. And the first Secretary of the Treasury was Alexander Hamilton. It's Alexander Hamilton. Everybody called him the bastard son of a Scottish merchant. The bastard son of a Scottish merchant. Other people called him the bastard son of a Jewish merchant. Fact is, nobody knew who his father was. He was, as our common law would say, illegitimate. Didn't know who his dad was. That doesn't make him any less of a man. It's a nasty thing to say. But on the other hand, Alexander Hamilton wasn't really what you'd call a conservative. Aaron Burr drilled him clean. There were two lawyers in New York City in those days. New York wasn't that big, and there were two lawyers at each other's throats constantly. Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton. In the courts, constantly. Finally, the insults got pretty intense, and they decided to duel it out with pistols. So they did. Secretary of the Treasury. See, he became Secretary of the Treasury. If you pull out a $10 bill, you'll have on it a picture of Alexander Hamilton. Now, the reason they called him the bastard son of a Scottish merchant, because somehow he got the name Hamilton, but nobody knows how. We do know, and he knows, that he was born on a Caribbean island called Nevis, Nevis, which was at that time, and during the American War for Independence from Britain, that was the headquarters, little tiny place, but it was the headquarters of the British fleet in the New World. A lot of supplies piled up there, and the British fleets would supply there, and he was born there. Somehow he got the name Hamilton. Well, they said, well, he named Hamilton, somehow he's connected to a Scotsman named Hamilton. So they called him the bastard son of a Scottish merchant. But others called him the bastard son of a Jewish merchant, because they said that the fellow Hamilton took the name Hamilton, but he was really a Jew, which Jewish people often do. They're rather international. They don't care about what their background is. They have a different culture, you see, and so they'll change their names in a chameleon fashion. Well, nobody knows, but he got in this duel with Aaron Burr. Aaron Burr was grandson to the man they called the greatest intellect America ever produced. He was the second. His grandpa was the second president of Princeton College, which today is called Princeton University. His grandfather was a Puritan to the nth degree, a Calvinist, Jonathan Edwards. Great man. He had the Bible wired like nobody in America had ever had it wired before. Hardwired. He showed how it all made sense. You know what a theologian does? A theologian is just a man that tries to show how the Bible makes sense and not nonsense. It's not any more complicated than that. Now, you can get into some complicated stuff, but let's understand up front what a theologian is. He's a man who spends his life showing how the Bible makes sense and not nonsense. And in that respect, every Christian man it has to be interested. If he's a Christian man, he's got the Spirit of God. He wants to know what God said, and he'll try to see how it makes sense and not nonsense. And when we talk about the Bible here, you're just looking at a guy that I'm trying to show people how I understand the Bible makes sense and not nonsense. That's all. Well, Jonathan Edwards was good at it. And he made it simple, by the way. I've read his books. Very simple. He's preached America's most well-known sermon. Some of you have heard of it. It is the most well-known sermon ever preached in America. It went viral in that day, and it remained viral for decades. The name of the sermon was Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. And he took for his verse from the prophet, he took for his text for the sermon just a few words, and it said this: in time, their foot shall slip. That's it. In time, their foot shall slip. I never heard a man break down, in time, their foot shall slip. 6 words. I've never heard a man break down 6 words in any more detail than he did in that sermon. I mean, he broke it down. He showed the context, of course, around it, what it meant, and what, you know what it means? I studied it a long time too. You know what it means? It means that in time, their foot shall slip. That's what it means. Just take it for what it says. If somebody's doing wrong, in time, their foot shall slip. And when their foot slips, they're going to go down on their can. And when they go down on their can, they're going to go down hard. And like they used to say in Shawnee-town back home, Shawnee-town we called it, if you ever get somebody down in Shawnee-town, you're a fool to let them up. You do, they'll get you. Well, when God gets a man down, he didn't let him up, except he raises him to new life. Otherwise, he annihilates him. Listen to me. If God ever gets somebody down, and it's true of men too, once we get men down, we have 2 choices: mercy or terminal action. That's the only 2 choices you have if you really have to get a man down. He's trying to get you down, you get him down. We got Germany down. We got them down, annihilated the country. There wasn't anything left. We had bombed them to oblivion. We had 2 choices at that point. Finish them off or mercy. Which did we choose? Mercy. In war, vicious. We were vicious. In peace, merciful. Same thing in Japan. We annihilated 60 to 70% of all of the towns and cities in Japan before we ever dropped the atomic bomb. When they finally said uncle after the second bomb, atomic bomb, the napalm didn't seem to bother them that much. Truman said he ordered the first bomb to be dropped, and he went to the Oval Office and sat and waited for the telephone to ring. He thought maybe they'd call him after that. He waited a while, and they never called. The line was open. Said, well, drop the next one. They dropped the next one. And he went back to the Oval Office and sat and waited for the phone to ring. Now this is according to his testimony. I read it in his autobiography. The name of it, well, it wasn't really an autobiography. It was kind of like an autobiography. It was a fellow that interviewed him, big, thick book. Good reading. He just tells what really happened. He said, I sat by the telephone after we had dropped that second one. And he said, then the phone rang. I reached, grabbed it. Hello, Mr. President. The so-and-so muckety-muck big shot in Japan wants to talk to you. I said, well, put the boy on. I'll talk to him. They said they wanted to talk. He said, I thought maybe you'd want to talk. If we kept dropping these bombs, I thought maybe we just wanted to talk to you is all we wanted. That's what he told him. That wasn't funny. Evil doesn't back off until you take away the ability of evil to do its dirty deeds. If it's really bad to the bone, they won't back off. I don't care what you do to them. That's important to remember in life. I've learned that lesson on the personal level. People will not back off if they're bad to the bone. It's either you or them. Now, we have lawful ways. We have lawful ways here on the personal level to deal with people. It's called the courts. And if they won't back off, people are wise to resort to that first if the courts are open. That's the answer to violence. Is battle by trial instead of trial by battle. So we do that. And as they said with the Japs, MacArthur standing on the deck of the mighty Mo, USS Missouri, he said, "We have finally settled the differences between our two nations, the imperial government of Japan and the United States of America, on fields of battle." That's how we settled it, because they wouldn't go to the courts. They said, "We're going straight to battle," and they bombed Pearl Harbor. They say, well, it was all a setup. Whatever the case, it happened. And once you're in it, you got to finish it, otherwise they'll destroy you. DJ Trump's in the political realm. If he gets these scumbags down that are his enemies, he'll have to take away their ability to do what they're doing, and do it in a peaceable way if possible. That's what he's doing now. And by and large, no man's perfect. He's not Sunday school superintendent, I keep saying. He's president of the United States. And our common law requires that he uses all power and influence that is available to him to assert his jurisdiction as the executive branch of our country. Just as Congress is to use everything available to them that's lawful to assert their jurisdiction against him, and the Supreme Court of the United States is to do everything available to them to assert their jurisdiction against those other two branches. We got this three-way Mexican standoff here. This is Constitutional Law 101. Constitutional Law 101. Remember, I said at the beginning, I've said it 1,000 times, I still say it, our Constitution of the United States is a brief of common law government. Well, what's common law government? Our Constitution doesn't apply to anything but the government. It doesn't apply to me. Well, we have common law that applies to me. Contract law, tort law, trust law, law of bailments, invitor, invitee, family law. We have all these common law subjects. Well, that's not what's in our Constitution. Our Constitution is a very narrow slice of our common law of government, of our common law, that is, as it applies to government. Yeah. And what's the most fundamental, arguably the most fundamental reality of common law government? People say, oh, that's constitutional government. No, that's common law government. Our Constitution just stresses it. What is it? It's that the three branches of government are co-equal. Co-equal. I learned that in high school. I had to pass a test on the Constitution of the United States before they would grant me a diploma. Funny, isn't it? I've said that before. That really happened. And we spent a long time preparing for that test. I learned more in that test than I learned in law school, preparing for that test than I learned in law school of 3 years. Just about the Constitution of the United States. I learned other things in law school, of course. Constitution of the United States and practicing law. That's where you really learn law, is getting out there. And yeah, you can go to boot camp. You can go to infantry training. You can go to munitions school. You can go to all the schools military establishment offers. But you don't really know. You know about a lot of stuff. Oh, yeah, you're prepared. Now you're prepared to know the stuff. And the only way you're going to know it is use it. Then you know. That's the way it is in the practice of law. You know about a lot of things, but you don't know it until you get in there and start slugging it out and realize, hey, it's all or nothing here. Same thing is true in all of life. There comes a point where you need to know things to win. You can't just know about it. And the only way to do that is to get into the baptism of fire and use it. Yeah. And you better be well prepared when you do. And there comes a time when you're prepared, and don't get in a hurry. Don't get in a hurry. I'm 20 years old. You ain't there yet. Just keep watching. Don't look for a time to fight. Don't do that. Listen to me. I don't care how old you are. Do not be anxious to go into battle. Don't be anxious to fight. God will orchestrate the right time he wants to use you. You be as reserved as you can and try to avoid the fight as much as you can for as many years as you can. But there will come a time, it may come when you're younger, it may come when you're older, when God will press it upon you and you won't have any choice. I remember the story that I heard when I was a kid, and the guy used to be on the radio tell stories, and he told about his cousins who had this old pickup truck. And the way he described it, I could relate to. When the family would drive down the road, there were about a dozen children or something. He'd have them in the back and the front. And when they drove down the gravel road, the front fender would flop against the wheel. Well, that's the way old Uncle Billy Jones was. He lived south of 3/4 of a mile, Uncle Billy. I don't care what he drove, it was falling apart, even a relatively new car. He had a 57 Chevy, and it was a popular kind. It has the light blue and the white. Remember, the 57 went to the square style. We had a 53 when I was growing up. The 53 was still round. Everything was rounded on the 53. The fenders were round. The top was round. 53 Chevy, it was green. But then in 55, the Chevys came out and they started to go to the more square style, and 56 more so, and then 57, they went to the rocket style, and they began to have the fins. Remember the fin on the back of 57? It made it look like a rocket to keep it stable when it was flying type thing. That was very popular because of the UFO craze and the Cold War. And then, boy, they came out with that Chevy that had the fins that went out like wings. Those things were in the way. That was a 1960 model, I believe. My grandma had one of those. Boy, she'd cuss those fins. She was a rough one. That grandma was. The other one wasn't. She could cuss like a sailor. She restrained herself at the proper moments. I remember one time we were out in the backyard and she'd come over and help us. You know, you breaking green beans, you know, getting them ready to cook. We used to do all that stuff. Today, people just cook green beans that long and you eat them like a candy stick or something. But used to, we'd break them up. So then we'd cook them. And then she was sitting back there with Mom breaking green beans. My little brother was out there, and I don't remember what happened. She said something about a ruby. Well, I won't say it. A ruby, that's a beautiful stone, but it was in under a goat's tail. That's what it amounted to. But let me get back to the 57. Grandma had all these sayings, you know. We're talking about the car. I forgot where I was going with all that. I was going to make an illustration.
Wings, fins.
Fins, yeah, I was talking about fins, but I got to talking about cars, and I was going to make an illustration, tell a story about the Constitution of the United States, and I was trying to make a point. I got so far afield. That's not my fault. I guess I can't help it. If you can't help it, it's not your fault, is it? Or is that true? Maybe I'm just undisciplined. That's the problem. Well, getting back to the Constitution, we're getting close to the top of the hour. Direct tax. Congress, and of course the census is taken. The census is taken so that the tax will be fair across the nation. This is not observed anymore. Let's get to the rest of this. Next question. May any money be required to pay on goods exported, that is carried out from any of the states? No. Answer no. Oh, I thought he was going to get to this more. I'm going to flesh this out, 157. Direct taxes laid in order that a certain sum be laid on each taxpayer. Remember, this is the general government in Washington, D.C. That's what they used to call it, but they got away from that. Why? They didn't want you to think of it that way. I mean, who even knows what the word general means now? General. General means without exception. That's what general means. We don't even define it that way. The general government in Washington, D.C., according to the terms of the Constitution of the United States, everything that general government does must apply equally to everybody in the United States. They're not allowed to play favorites. You see, if you're in the state of Ohio, Kentucky, Kansas, Texas, the laws that state legislature make are for that state. And the states have what we call the police power. They can make a law that applies or benefits a specific group if they want. There's more power there, not in Washington, D.C. They're not to have that kind of power. Everything they do is to be general, is to apply to everybody equally, especially taxes. Well, let me give you the scheme as it was set up. We don't hear about this anymore and don't practice it, but the Constitution hasn't changed. Here's the way it was supposed to work. Congress says, we need 10 million, no, let's say we need $1 million. No, let's say we need $1 billion, 1 billion. The national budget, the first national budget in America that exceeded $1 billion was about the year 1900 during the presidency of William McKinley. And let's see. Oh, I don't remember, but it's about 1900. But it wasn't under the presidency of Theodore Roosevelt, the one just before him. reached $1 billion. Let's say that Congress passed a law saying we need $1 billion for the next year's budget to fund the Army, the Navy, building of interstate roads, whatever. Well, whatever was in that budget had to apply and benefit, to the best calculations we could do, everybody in America equally. Washington, D.C. has no authority to take in money and taxes and then apply it in this state and not that state, or in this to this people of color and not that people of color, to these sex perverts and not everybody else. They have no authority under the Constitution to do that. The preamble makes that clear, and that's always been the doctrine. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, that's the preamble, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense. Now watch this. Promote the general welfare. That means it has to apply to everybody. The welfare, that means the good going of the nation, has to apply to everybody equally. Therefore, when we take money from people, we do it equally. We don't say, well, we're taking money from you over here, not you over here. So what they would do, we need $1 billion. They would divide, they'd take that $1 billion, that figure, and they'd say, okay, this state over here has 10 million people, and this state over here has 5 million people. This state over here has 1 million people, and they would divide that $1 billion up, and they would assign that much money proportionally to each state according to population, see? The state that had 10 million people would be required to send to the federal government in Washington, D.C., twice as much as the state that had 5 million people. Everything was fair according to each state. No state was required, according to the terms of our Constitution, to bear more of the national tax burden than the proportion of its population to the rest of the states. The states that had less population paid less into the federal treasury by that proportion, and the state that had greater population paid more. California is pushing 50 million people now. Wyoming barely has 500,000. That's 500,000. Wyoming has, well, just say for round figures, 500,000 people. California has 50 million people. According to our Constitution, who is to pay the most tax into the federal treasury? By 100 times, have I got that right? By 100 times under those figures I gave you, 50 million and 500,000, by 100 times more, California is to pay into the national treasury, and they did it by states. The call went out to the states, said, we don't care how you get the money, you're required under this Constitution of ours to pay Wyoming, to pay this much, 1/100th of what California pays. In California, you're required to pay 100 times more. We don't care how you get it. It's not our business. Get us the money. You want to be a part of the country, get us the money. If you don't do it, we have force and threat of force to make it happen. That's the way the country is supposed to work. In other words, the jurisdiction of the federal taxing powers was to be to the states. Now listen to me. One more thing, just to try to dissuade the distractors from their lies about taxation. Our Constitution of the United States talks about the direct tax. Direct tax. What's a direct tax? Well, that's the opposite of an indirect tax. Well, what does that mean, Brent? Here it is. An indirect tax, I can pass on to somebody else. A direct tax, I can't pass on to somebody else. A liquor tax, let's say a more we would understand this better. A gasoline tax, we have those in every state, it is paid by who? Well, the man who sends a check to the federal government is the seller of the gasoline. But he passes that tax on to you. That's an indirect tax on the American that buys gasoline. It's called an indirect tax. This provision of our Constitution that talks about direct taxes does not apply to all the sales taxes we have on food, gasoline, liquor, cigarettes, whatever you're selling, cars, combines. If there's a tax on it, boats, that's indirect. Number one, you don't have to buy gasoline if you don't want to pay that tax. You don't have to buy liquor tax. You don't have to pay the liquor tax unless you want to buy liquor. You don't have to pay the cigarette tax or the tobacco tax unless you buy tobacco. You choose not to buy tobacco, you don't pay that tax. If there's a tax on bicycles, you don't have to pay that tax if you don't want to buy a bicycle. Now watch this. That's called an indirect tax. You don't have to pay it. Direct taxes are what we call unavoidable. Unavoidable. See, the salesman that sells gasoline can avoid that tax. He just passes it on to you. He didn't pay it. He makes money either way. See, he'll make the same amount of money because he just raised the price to cover the tax. See? He can pass it along. It's avoidable. But what about those taxes that are unavoidable? Unavoidable. Let me give you an example of an unavoidable tax. The income tax has always been, our courts have called it unavoidable. Why? Because you got to make a living. How can you not make a living? Some people say, well, if you don't have the income, you don't have to pay the tax. Yeah, but I got to have the income or I'll starve to death. Oh, we didn't think of that. Well, it's not really true. You can starve to death if you want to and die. You don't have to pay that tax if you don't want to. You can live in a hole in the ground or under a bridge someplace if you want to. You don't have to pay the tax. You see where the line gets blurry to people there. And so the government, the IRS says, oh, the income tax is not a direct tax. Therefore, we can tax you directly and you can avoid it. And our courts have said up until the 1900s said, no, that's a direct tax. You can't avoid paying it. Everybody's going to have some kind of an income or they're going to be dead. Let me give you another example of a direct tax. A tax on carbon emissions. Carbon emissions. Does your body emit carbons? Yeah. Well, we're going to have to tax you on that. You've been breathing air that belongs, we say the air belongs to the government. You've been breathing it, we're going to give you a tax on that. And they can say, well, you don't have to breathe it if you don't want to. You can shoot yourself in the head. Now let's review. If I don't have to pay it and I can find a way to avoid it, that's called an indirect tax. These words get confusing. They don't have to be, but they choose the wrong ones and they don't define it. A direct tax is a tax you can't avoid. And direct taxes, according to our Constitution of the United States, must be distributed according to population to the states. That way, everything is fair and the tax is general and fair according to state. And what we take the money for applies to everybody, it benefits everybody equally. That's the way we want to do it. And our courts, in cases of misunderstanding, have to decide that question. You see what I'm saying? But this is Brent Allen Winters, commonlawyer.com, www.commonlawyer.com, coming at you from the remote hinterlands of the Wabash River Valley, where the hogs, the frogs, and the dogs keep up a racket all night long. This is a Common Lawyer Comments concerning our common law, our law of the land,